So in this Battletech podcast, I wanted to revisit the JagerMech and kind of share my thoughts on this mech, how it's evolving, bringing it on the table, and kind of answering some questions. Now, with every mech, with every machine in Battletech, we all have our favorites. And sometimes tactically they make a lot of sense. They're very powerful. Other times they've got some quirks. You might have some emotional history to it. You know, look, I first started playing Battletech, and this is the first mech I played. And on that first game, I scored a crit hit and like blew it up and all this amazing stuff, even though it's not really the best mech on there. The biggest challenge in Battletech is understanding, and this is really different than a lot of other games, the idea of the Star League and the various factories and companies, General Motors putting stuff out, Kong Industries, my personal favorite. This idea of a lot of these corporations building these mechs. Some were very powerful, some were good, some were just junk, some were just there to sell. Certainly, Ed 209 like that. Who cares if it works? What we'd make in spare parts and maintenance contracts would more than make up for it. So not all mechs are equal. So we really need to tactically look on the table and ask some hard questions. So I say that because I don't want to just like totally trash on and slaughter your JagerMech and your kind of, amazing mech. Certainly in the inner sphere, if you've inherited this mech, you could do a lot worse. But I've noticed in playing it numerous battles, and I still play it, there's a couple of questions that need to be asked. And that's what we're going to take a look at. We're looking at stock, of course. Variants, whether the official variants or kind of your Franken-Mech kind of planning stuff out. That's a different game altogether. So we've got an Autocannon 2, we've got an Autocannon 5, and we've got a medium laser. We've got them in tandem, so we've got two AC2s, two AC5s, two medium lasers. Okay. My question for this is, I would classify this as a support mech. You're going to be plinking things with the autocannon, and then if range gets close, you've got the medium lasers for backup and also defense. You play it reasonably well, we don't have to worry about heat. That is a major, and this is coming from a guy that pushes heat, right? But that's a major plus, in my opinion, on there. But when we have a dedicated support mech, so this is a support mech, wouldn't we want more damage? Look, compare that to something like the longbow. Compare that to some of the other mechs that can mount long-range missiles or kind of the tandem of that. The JagerMech has consistent damage output of 2 and 5. If I hit you, I know the damage I'm going to do. Compare that to LRM 10s, 15s, and 20s. We're not really going to compare an LRM 5 on there. That, if I hit, that has tremendous potential to spill out a lot more dice, to spill out a lot more potency with what it hits. So why wouldn't I take something that, if it's going to be specialized, then really specialize and have it with that roll up there? That's the first question on there. The second question is, okay, if I'm going to be that specialized, range. Well, the only real range advantage I get, the longest range tops out, we're talking inner sphere tech. No clans yet. We don't even know what the clans are yet on there. They're just mythology. The Autocannon 2 is where it tops out and has the absolute range. But you're doing 2 points of damage. And if it's a fluid battle, meaning you're walking to me, I'm walking to you, that's going to buy me what? One game turn that I can shoot at you, and then, we'll be in range for other stuff on there. Is that really worth the specialization and kind of the role of the JagerMech on there? Now, to flip it on the other side, to answer that question, if it's not a static battle, meaning an opponent you're literally attacking a base, or I'm attacking a certain position, or what we find, your opponent will play certain mechs or have certain tactics, and there's certain terrain features that if they can capture that and if they can dig in, and that's, they're going to go for that terrain feature, they're going to go for that building, they're going to go for that landing pad, they're going to dig in, they're going to have an advantage, they're not going to leave. Well, in that case, something with an Autocannon 2 in tandem, I can be out of range, and I can sit there and plink away every single turn. It's only 2 points of damage, but that is guaranteed generated dice every single turn. that I don't have to worry about return fire, unless they close, right? The threat bubble, the projection bubble, the hex bubble of that JagerMech, that's going to kind of push out on that. Is that worth the specialization on there? Possibly. But now we get into this idea, if I'm going to specialize at that long range, I'm only putting out with the AC2s. Well, for the battle value, I can get a blackjack. And I like the blackjack. I took a little bit of heat on that on the last podcast. Again, certainly there's better mechs out there. But the blackjack for the battle value, if I really want a support long range, I go with that. I can trump that one better and say partisan tanks. If we're going to go combined arms and you want to open that up in your collection and utilize all that, the partisan tanks for the battle value, you're going to get 4 of the autocannons to kind of plink away at. That's pretty good. Throw down 2 or 3 partisans for the same battle value. That's potent. Now you say, well, they're really paper thin. They're vehicles. They get hit motive damage. Right, but they're a true support. They're going to be hanging out all the way in the back. And the only way your opponent's going to get to them is if they go for a dedicated end run on them, which, if they're going to do, they're going to do. But if it's a defensive type game, I know I just said we don't know what the clans are, but in my last clan game, my partisan tanks, I had a pair of them. They were just brutal in that they were hanging out on the edge of the city. The clans pushed into the city. Obviously, I was defending Inner Sphere, and the clan tech wanted to get, as much as they have range, they wanted to get close. They wanted to utilize all that metal, all that stuff in there, and they did a great job engaging my mechs. That left the partisans completely unmolested, unhindered, unbeat on for the entire game, and they're just plinking away. I mean, think about the gunners in there. They were just blasting away. Eventually, it got a little bit so insane that I believe it was a Timberwolf that was like, I just had enough of this. These Desgra, Inner Sphere mech warriors are bad enough with no clan honor. But now I got these tanks, and of course, the Timberwolf just pulped them. But yeah, they did really, really good for the game. So if I'm looking for that dedicated support, I feel like with the JagerMech, we'll get a blackjack. And if I'm going to get a blackjack, then maybe I get the partisan tanks. Now, where we draw the line between the tanks and the mechs, motive hits, yes. But more importantly, a lot depends on terrain. And as much as I'm a tread head and I love vehicles, I do have to admit, on certain gaming boards that you play on, having a mech, the mobility of a mech, not to take motive hits and also to redeploy and to torso twist, that's huge. That's really, really big on that. So there is some reason to take, say, a blackjack over the partisan tanks. But again, paying the battle value and paying for what I'm going to get. Okay, so what about target priority with the JagerMech? Anti-air, in the narrative and the kind of the sales brochure from, I'm forgetting who marketed it, but the sales brochure says it's like, the fixes for the riflemen and the upgrade for anti-air. Yeah, you can engage anti-air with the 2s and 5s. Special ammo aside, maybe you play with that, maybe you don't. It's going to put on some dice, and if it's a conventional air support fighter or VTOL, it's going to be some pilot checks, there's going to be some damage going on. Yeah, it's decent. But do you play with that in your games? Is that tactically what you open? If you never play with air support, then I don't know. Is it worth it? So target priority. Obviously plinking away for 2 and 5 points of damage, and this is coming from a guy that my whole strategy is big guns never tire. I mean, I got like AC-20s on everything. In my narrative game, my urban mech, I just upgraded to the 6L. I mean, we're putting down, mad AC-20s everywhere on there. Irby going up to like an Atlas and just like kicking him in the shin and hitting him with the AC-20 and all this crazy stuff on there. So that personal bias aside, the idea is, what damage is that really going to do to a mech? I mean, if it's a light mech, sure, but am I really going to hit that light mech even if I get closer in range? It's always a possibility. But other mechs, like heavy mechs and assault mechs, are going to be like, what? I mean, I might as well be hitting them with machine guns with that. But obviously then I'm close and I'm eating SRM 6s and medium lasers and getting punched with fists, 100-ton fist coming at my face, 1 in 6 chance of hitting, and all that stuff that makes you really kind of scared. AC-20s coming at you, all that craziness on there. Target priority where it's going to be at. Certainly I'll shoot it whatever it's in range. I'll shoot whatever I have to. But I find in a fortified position, the JagerMech is great at taking out infantry support vehicles, so you can isolate the actual infantry and go in there with the flamers and the machine guns. It's great for dealing damage to tanks, hitting motive hits or turret locks, or kind of going against light vehicles. It just tears through hovers and things like that. So the target priority is almost better at sweeping away vehicles. If I do that, can I dedicate some of my heavy and my assault mechs to that? Interesting. So just questions. I find that if it's a mech I enjoy playing, I need to look at its role. I need to look at its tonnage, its weight, its ability, and just ask, like, okay, I see what it's supposed to do. Does it do that on the table? It's like a decision tree. If it doesn't, what are the blocks hitting it? How do we get past that? How do we explore it? What do we do? And kind of move from there to there and there. Your thoughts on the mech. And if this is your favorite mech, is it working? Is it playing? And just for the street cred, I have two. One in my they're both mercenary lances. One in my Dogs of War Merc Lance, and I have one in my Grey Death Legion on there. And I do enjoy playing it, and I do enjoy the damage output, dice and rolling it. But I'm looking and trying to really say, what does this mech do?